And welcome, everybody. Another Monday, another respect. Hope you all had a great week. I know I did, and everything is good. And everything is so strange out there. It's amazing how a lot of people still just don't seem to be waking up and just don't seem to quite get it. So that's why I have my good friend here with us tonight, who I think is pretty good at helping you all to get it and to understand the way that things are and should be. So let's bring on my good buddy here, one and only Derek Johnson. How you doing there, kiddo?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Just enjoying the journey.
Yeah, it's quite a journey down that bumpy road, isn't it?
Well, it is for some, but uh, I guess it depends on what you define as bumpy.
Well,
But yeah,
when we sit there and we watch where we are, and you have so many patriots who claim to be awake. And I guess the only way I can really look at it is the old phrase, a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing. And people seem to think they know a lot more than the people who actually know. And the one thing that I've always said when it's in regard to you is, it's really kind of hard to debate anything that Derek says because it's right there in black and white. When it's in black and white, there's no wiggle room there. We're not doing legal interpretation here. These are codes, these are laws. What are you arguing about? But people still love to do that, don't they?
well, yeah, and I mean, the other thing about it is that if we were in a place where, it's like the Revolutionary War, they were so new with so many new ideas because they didn't have anything. Now we're in a place where we have everything. We have every thought, every law, everything, to where it's kind of like, the fruits are so abundant that, how do you distribute that? And getting people to see that, look, I mean, we have everything that we need, but when you have abundant fruit, you have people who want to hoard too much, right? So you have to use that kind of language and that verbiage, kind of paint that picture. Is that then they want to take it all and keep it themselves, and then they get this high and mighty attitude, and then treat you inferior. And there are people out there who do just want to live a normal life. I get that. I know everything that I read and study. Uh, you know, I go in and find all the cliff notes for people where you don't have to read all the thousands of pages, but it's there. So we're in that era where we have everything, and there's nothing to debate. Uh, there's nothing to debate either with living either. Everybody wants to live free, be merry, be happy. You know, so we have that. And like I try to tell people is that you want people like me with my mentality, because my mentality is the mentality that, um, that old, there's a slogan that wokeness breeds weakness. Well, I'm all right with people being in their world and just doing their daily life, because you do have people like me. But when you get to a point where you doubt people like me, you question people like me, but then you don't go read and study that. But then when you don't even read and study, then you got the ones out there who are just always trying to find something wrong instead of let's get something right. Then when they can't find something wrong, there must be something about you, Mark. We got to find something. They can't find anything. Then they do what? They make something up, right? So how did we get to a place in the world where people are so hateful, spiteful, negative, bitter, angry, all these things? When all I do to people is like, why are you so mad? Why are you mad? Why are you upset? If you're upset because you feel like that something isn't going blah 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 blah, but you got to figure out what blah 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 is, right? Because there might just be an answer there. And that's what I've tried to tell people is that it sounds braggadocious. I mean, I know it does because I say it a lot on my own, but in reality, my books they're the only books that outline the whole operation. Now, I could put every single thing in it because no one would read the doggone thing. It would be longer than Obamacare, which you can't even put your hands in the screen how big Obamacare, literally the books were that people don't even realize that's how fit these books were of Obamacare. That one attorney, not multiple, but how would you get multiple attorneys to read that and all come together and go, well, I read this section and that? You can't. Right? That's why President Trump says you got to keep the cure simple. Right? So like what I'm trying to show people is that, hey, this is real easy. We already have everything we need. We have every law we need. We have everything. We have our format. We have our blueprint of life from the happiness side. But you want people like me when the going gets tough. I'm not being me, and I'm not being a you know what and all these other things out there that we have to have people that says, look, put all this other nonsense aside. Let's get straight to the brass knuckles, as the saying is. And that's where we are. And if people just realize the plan's already there, like it's already been established and there's nothing that can stop it. And you wouldn't want to stop it if you knew what I know. And, it's just getting people to just chill. Just come on now. But, what always ends up happening, though, is just like anything else. Either you find out the hard way or, you find out in a more humble setting. But I was thinking about this earlier, and I know I'm talking a lot right out the gate, but I just got to tell this one little thing that shows people my personality. When I was in high school, I was at a new school, so I was a new kid on the block. Trying to fit in already was tough. Already wasn't in style per se. I was a little cowboy and I didn't care about style and all these other things. I wasn't in American Eagle and Abercrombie and all these things, back in my high school years. That's what was popular. And there was a particular classroom I was sitting in, and I had met a buddy, and he was known as a nerd, super smart, but he was the nerd. So he and I were sitting there talking about music and about a certain album. And we were talking about how Vince Gill sang backup on a Faith Hill record. Well, the girl at the very front of the class, cheerleader, that's a very vital point, sitting in the front, turns around. We're back here about midway behind the class. The teacher wasn't in class at the moment. And she's like, Vince Gill is too big to sing on a Faith Hill record. That's not right. That's false. And I was like, well, one, this is a A-B conversation, so you can see your way out of here. Two, nobody asked you. Three, we weren't talking to you. And four, it has nothing to do with being big. It has nothing to do with that. Background vocalist is So anyway, so she made a spectacle out of that. And all the popular kids just rained down on me, just like humiliated me. Now, that's a big deal when you're in the 10th grade, right? It ain't now, but now looking back, getting to tell this story shows people what kind of personality I have, because I'm the kind, when you humiliate me like that, or you do something like that for you to prove a point, when I know the whole time I'm sitting there knowing, now I don't have the sleeve with me. I don't have Faith Hill's album with me. But when I get it in my hand, you're going to look at it and you're going to acknowledge it, right? So when I know something that is a fact, and I didn't make the fact up. The fact is irrelevant as far as one way. I didn't write the song. I didn't produce the album. I didn't call Vince Gill, hey, you want to sing on this record? The fact was already there, right? So when I know something like that, you just add me on. And so next day, I took the humility, all that other stuff. I got home that evening, my mother's car, got the CD sleeve out, pulled that thing out, just licking my chops. And I waited all the way to the 6th period too. I waited all the way around first, second, third, fourth, fifth to the same classroom. The next day, same girl, same audience. I slapped it on her desk. I mean, I slammed it on there too. Just I made that thump sound. Read it. I'm like, read it, right? I don't. It's read it. So, oh no, she didn't want to read it, and then she also said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal." I'm like, "No, you made it a big deal, and you're going to read it. And if you don't, I'm going to read it for you. So you get to choose." I'm that kind of thing. And that's what I try to tell people. It's like, look, you don't have to like the law. And I'm sure there's a lot of laws. I know there are for me, but I'm sure there's a lot that you and I could discuss on a different, podcast where we can just find a bunch of laws that don't support the Constitution. So it's like I tell people, this is a specific blueprint by President Trump. Don't worry about the rest right now. We'll get to the rest later. And we should, because we're talking about years of abuse by career politicians, years when Jimmy Stewart, the legendary Jimmy Stewart that my dad got to serve around way back, but he had the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, 1939. He's trying to tell people in a movie way back in the 30s, this is how DC works. It's trash. It's garbage. It's all. And so if people would realize that, man, this has been going on for years, right? So there's laws that are atrocious that don't, state laws, federal laws, local laws that need to be abolished. But like I tell everybody, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, whatever you are, you need to know how it works, how it functions, how it operates, right? Those are, and then you're going to find it's real easy as a commonality there that, look, we all want happiness. We all want to pursue it. We all want to live a good life. We all, so like I try to tell people, our founders were genius with the separation of religion because they never wanted something to come down to religion as the crutch, right? Or as the means to get to the solution. It's like, no, let's get to a solution, whether you're gay and an atheist and I'm a conservative and straight as an arrow. We can get to a solution with some things without even involving religion or the way you live your life. And if people would get to that and go, hey, do you realize that anything put in law means it's up for interpretation? Then it depends on who's interpreting the law, right? So it can work for you for 5, 10, 20 years, but then all of a sudden, all these other people come in, and then your little nest that you built, it gets what? Demolished because of it being a law, right? Versus human rights, straight up first off, God-given rights, and then human rights, going, hey, if you are okay with this, and this, and I'm not hurting or harming, why does it need to be in law? When it goes in law, ladies and gentlemen, the deep state, it's been money. Now, not the new, what we're trying to reestablish and get cleaned out is get all that abolished where they were making money off of it, dividing everybody, and then coming over here and appeasing this group, and then appeasing this group. And then, so if people would see that, look, you don't have to like it, but if you'll learn what has happened and look at the future, what our goals are, and that's the biggest thing is getting that barrier broken there of the past ideologies that people thought were ideologies, but they're not. They were psychological manipulation. It wasn't ideology. Breaking that.
And well, this is a big problem because, first of all, you and I are just too terribly much alike because I did kind of the same exact thing to a reporter. Right smack in the middle of the newsroom one day after he challenged me on something. But, we have built a society, the cabal has built a society that has evolved to the point, especially much more so over the past 15 years or so, where we can't discuss anything. It's become, and I've repeated this ad nauseum already, where people feel that a debate gets won by whoever shouts the loudest. There's no conversation. People can't converse anymore. They can't look at each other. They can't discuss with each other. They can't agree to disagree, which is probably the most important thing in a civilized society, is the ability to agree to disagree and have those tough conversations. And people have gone beyond that. So it's easier for them to challenge and to put you down and to try and catch you up in something than it is to, and that's why I held this up before. I say this all the time also. There's more information at people's fingertips now than ever in human history. And people can't be bothered to look it up. They can go and bother to, to get the new iPhone. They can be bothered to go and, look up what's hot on TikTok or Instagram. But to look up stuff that matters, to stuff that affects your daily life, they just can't be bothered doing. And to say it's stable on society.
And getting to what you were saying about like the reporter and what I did to that girl was that was in my generation and back with yours, that was still a rare thing. Because most of the time, if someone didn't know something, they were too humiliated to when they didn't know something was an absolute fact, they would wait to have some formulation that they thought was a fact, especially something more broad than a CD with two singers, right? Something that's in law or things of that nature. There's been occasional people that my dad and different people have talked about through the years where they'll just blatantly butcher a law, but predominantly most people were more apt to sit back and then go read and research what they could. But the other thing people forget about too, and I know you this is about to strike a nerve with you in a good way, but maybe a bad good way. But but my generation back, I was the last generation where you had to go in a library and look on the end and have to, find a section, go down to that doggone thing, find the book, go back to your desk, or 2 or 3 books, depending on what it was in the assignment. Then when you got in the book, it had like 5 to 10 references in the paragraph. If those weren't in that book and the other books you pulled, you had to go pull those books, pull them physically, and physically open them. And then either write it down, because we didn't have a phone to photo it, so you had to write it down. So people wonder, with my memory, it's not that God gave. I mean, I do have a photographic memory, yes. So there's a little extra, but a lot of that's just sharpening my skills by what we had to do growing up by writing it down and knowing that if you didn't write it down and jog it to memory, well, you had to go right back to that same process again, to that library, find a book, open the book, find the page. If people would realize that those of us leading the way in this operation, and I'm a low man on the totem pole. I'm not anything in the war rooms and up here. I know a lot of them that are, but if people would realize that everyone leading this comes from one of those generations, right? And so if they make that applicable in their minds, but like you say, they can't be bothered either because it's been one by choice and then the most by design, right? So it's a combination of the two. It's that this was the deep state's plan. This is where if you're listening out there, if you're new, this is what they wanted for you. They wanted you to be this way, right? And there's guys like me trying to grab you in a loving manner, even if I'm shaking you, going, listen. It don't matter what you look like, who you are, background, yada, yada, none of that. I'm not here for that. I'm not your preacher. I'm not your husband. Look, I'm assigned to do this one thing, and it can get you out of it, that mind and that. And I've already, like I said, I've made the blueprints where you don't have to read. I mean, you've seen them. I mean, that just an NDAA alone Just the NDAA alone can be 700 to 1,100 pages. All right. And those are the ones where they got the references. It's nothing but a reference book, basically. And so that's just that. The Law of War Manual, 1,200 plus pages. I mean, we're talking thousands of pages that people like me read to get through the nuggets for you out there to where you don't have to in your busy life. But I've had people message and say, you know, Derek, we're so busy. We don't have the time you have. We're working 2 and 3 jobs. I'm like, you're working 2 and 3 jobs because of what they did to you, right? The tax for the tax for the tax for the tax and all these regulations and all, they did this for their quote unquote democracy, right? They did establish a democracy, theirs, right? We're not one, but so it's like trying to get people to say, look, wherever you find 5 or 10 minutes, you got to sacrifice somehow, because we've done that. I've done that in my life, one in the military and then out of it. And then Mark, you've sacrificed because you could have been playing golf or you could have been doing something where you took time to read and study and go, you know what? I want to do this, but you know what? But then again, it's kind of like God does. Bible's a great example where he calls different people up, right? We have an account of a Moses and people in the wilderness. We don't have their names. We have his name, though. But people have to realize that the Bible does tell you, Matthew 7:16, that you can judge them. Well, there's one that says you can judge by the fruits, the tree, the fruit by the fruit it bears. But then Matthew 7:16, you'll know them by their fruits. Well, you know, and then it goes on to say about grapes and thorns and, you know, and things of that nature. So it's like people got to realize that. See, but the thing that you and I are talking about, a lot of these folks by design don't know what to look up because they don't have any of that index, that glossary, the definitions. And so, but I'm still the guy at the end of the day, and I know you are too, but I'm that guy at the end of the day that says, all right, well, you're still complaining though. You're complaining and you're whining and you're fussing and you're griping and you're trying to fight with somebody on things you don't even know a single word from a single sentence, from a single paragraph, from a single law. And you're trying to fight over it. And I'm like, you're just wasting your energy. You could be doing something like golf, or you could be putting your energy into something that provides you a stress environment or stress-free mind without wasting your energy over here on something you don't even already know about anyway. And so that's the stuff that we're talking about, is that I was just telling a friend yesterday and one today, I'm like, you know, they were like, do you really think we can maintain and sustain? I'm like, well, the deep state's going to be cleaned out. The trafficking's going to be cleaned out. We can't eradicate it, but we have suppressed it down to low levels. The cartels, we're taking it to them right now. I know for a fact we got special operations everywhere. And that's not a secret. That's already been announced. We have them all over Mexico, Central America, South America. And then we also have our Navy and Coast Guard taking it to them over in different seas. I mean, this is no secret. So we're decimating them. And so the deep state, their rings, their banks, President Trump talked about the banks today, put a post up today about the banks. Well, the banks, right? So we're taking that down. But the problem that we have, and especially my generation and lower, is who's going to pick up that torch? It's not the surface level nonsense that you and I see daily. It's not. And you and I, and it's no secret, we're talking about it in the pre-show about, you know, everything that when you were working in media, the ones right now are the same. It's the same rhetoric. It's a different face, different look, same old mouth, though. It's the same old rhetoric. And it's like I was telling you, you know, if they don't give someone like me, the button to go over there and delete these people, there's a difference in freedom of speech. And then there's absolute sedition, whether you're blatant or not. And the stuff that some of these rhinos, they look like rhinos, and I call them rhinos because they display that's the fruits they're displaying, right? But I'm not going to name them to give them the publicity, but there's ones out there to where, oh, President Trump, he's flipped his base, he's going against his word. And I'm like, if you only knew how atrocious you look, every single action that President Trump has taken Everyone. Iran, Somalia, Venezuela, Yemen, and Ukraine. Every one of them have a few things in common, but one big key thing. There are 2016 and past executive orders with national emergencies from the deep state. And when you know that the Iran one especially was signed and declared November the 18th, 1979, which is older than me, ladies and gentlemen, when you know that that's been continued all these years, then you go look at the language in it. Then you go look at the great deal by Obama that was supposed to decrease uranium enrichment from 98 to 3.67, which that's a random number in the first place, but the 98 to 3.67. How was Iran at 60% in one report? Some said 83, some said 60. But either way, how they were supposed to be at 3.67 from 2015 to the next review, which was 2030. So, if people would go read the National Defense Authorization Acts from 21 to 25, it's pro-President Trump. There was Iran's mentioned 13 times in the 2021 one, which is a low number. All right. So, and then if you go read, I think it's the 2023, it's either 2023 or 2024 NDAA. There's one group that President Trump, they exclude out, and it's a certain special operations force in Iran. I mean, it shows people that, look, if you know what you're supposed to know, you'd realize that, look, it's undesirable. And I've been teaching people this lately because where we finally are is where we need to be talking about the undesirability phase. And it's not necessarily that it's a phase. The whole operation was undesirable to have a continuity government, to have a government exile, to have a military government, to have all this. It's undesirable because me, given what I did in military, but given what I'm doing now, as a military personnel, I'm like, you shouldn't want this, no. But it was our only avenue. It was the crossroads that we came to. We, meaning the generals, the admirals, and where we were the deep state and all this propaganda and drama that Obama and them established and back all the way to Carter. You can argue, you and I can argue way back, which we can, the Organic Acts, but just going relevant for people. You don't have to go far back to see how deep their corruption went. And it was the crossroads we came to go and look, man, what were they promising? I know what they were, but this is how you pose it, ladies and gentlemen. What were they promising to Ukraine, Russia, Yemen? I mean, and we're not even naming some of those that we haven't even, we've dealt with them because they capitulated, like Oman and different places. There's some that capitulated, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, some capitulated. All right. But the ones that didn't are the visuals you're seeing right now. And so if people would just know what they're supposed to know, that this whole thing was a crossroads, and it comes to the question, okay, do you want to save the world and probably have to lose a few, or lose a lot of the world and only save a few? Which one is it? Right? And so many people just don't realize that how deep this got on the planet, not just America, but how deep these rings went. And so, it's truly a spiritual warfare and information warfare, but then it's the light versus the darkness. It's not really a Republican-Democrat war, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the Democrats, it's heavy on their side, but it's not just that. And people have got to get out of that mindset as well. It's like President Trump said the other day, stop calling it the SAVE Act. It's the Save America Act, right? Let's be specific. Let's call it what it is, and quit trying to shortcut things. It's this. And so, the undesirable is in the Law War Manual, and it talks about how it's an undesirable period. Nobody wanted to go through it, but this is where we came to, and the only way that we could take down this regime that was plaguing the world was certain strategies and tactics that, thank God, men long before me, one of them people can go look up his military law and precedents book. It's like 1,127 pages, but he's known as one of our gurus in military law. But Colonel William Winthrop. It's a great read. And he talks about the different military jurisdictions. I mean, he talks about a lot of things that people need to know, one, but the military jurisdictions. In our Constitution, there's 3 military jurisdictions, and 2 of those being the most popular that we've been talking about is military law and military government. And so, if it wasn't constitutional, then why did Congress all these years keep it in place? In the IEPA, that was the SCOTUS, that was judicial overreach, right? Because every single one of these executive orders that President Trump's dealing with Ukraine, with Yemen, Somalia, Iran, and Venezuela, every one of them have these 2 key terms: unusual and extraordinary threat. There's a national emergency that don't have that. Then there's one that says unusual and extraordinary. It automatically invokes the IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. So that shows right there that SCOTUS, even though I know we're still in the continuity government partial, and it's all theater for the ones that knows it's theater, but for the ones that don't know that, that's a judicial overreach. That they basically, one, violated the highest law in the land. All right, because it's not terminated yet. If they were going to terminate the IEPA, that's one thing. If they said, hey, the whole IEPA is fraudulent and unconstitutional, they didn't say that. They ruled on one little section of the IEPA. And if people would see what's going on, that we're going through a judicial reset right now. I have that timeline of 2017 to 21 as a legislative reset, 21, 25, the puppet government, the government, that's how all verified and validated by President Trump. That was 21, 25. That was a resetting of the executive branch. Now we're going through the resetting of the judicial. If people would just know that, that's what SCOTUS did. It was a judicial overreach. Because, again, if it was against the law, well, why was it lawful and okay for Obama and Jimmy Carter to declare these national emergencies and the IEPA? And all these years, they've continued that executive order, especially the 79. It'll be 47 years old in November. All right, but I like to use the 36 years because when President Trump got it, the whole plan changed. But for 36 years, that thing was continued every year. Well, it wasn't unconstitutional those years. Wasn't no one yelling unconstitutional then. Wasn't no one yelling, period. Right? So everybody yelling is because your bed's been shaken, right? Like an ant bed. I hate ant beds because in the South, they're fire ants are everywhere, and I'm always going up around kicking them, right? Because when you disturb them, they'll move. So I'm always kicking them and going, move. Well, that's what's going on right now. Is you've been disturbed, but you got to figure out why you've been disturbed, and then you got to figure out, do you really want to know? Because the answers are there. It's all there. You just got to want to know and apply. And like you and I know, if you're going to hold your phone 8 hours a day, well, you got to click on the right things and know what to look up. Or you can put your phone down and get you some books and read the 45-47 blueprint. It's one or the other, but it's there. But like you say, it's the initiative.
Well, first of all, there are a couple of things, but first of all, 79 was before you. Christ, I was at ABC for 2 years and married already. God. But
yes.
Above and
Making
beyond
Mark
that,
feel old.
But above and beyond that is there are 2 points to what you said that you missed, very, very important points. And one is that, these politicians did this to us. But the bigger point is, no, we allowed them to do this to us. This is our country. This is it's been a corporation for well over a century already. This is our corporation that we have allowed them to bankrupt. That's number one. And the other thing where you're talking about, when you had to go to the library and this and that and the other to research, the one thing that involves that people can't be involved with anymore, in spite of this, is its effort. You had to put in an effort to go to the library. You had to put in an effort to go to the card catalog, find where the books were, go search the shelves, find the number, pull the book, and then go through it. All effort. But because of all the things that the cabal has put out there, and look, technology is a wonderful thing. Everything's a wonderful thing in small doses. Okay, but technology has advanced to the point that you don't have to leave the bathroom to do almost anything. And people have gotten just, I hate to keep battering people with that because I know they resent it, but I really don't care. People have gotten inherently lazy. And because of that laziness and because of the apathy that it's caused, because they see that they can't make ends meet with two people working 3 jobs each, and the schools are raising the kids and they're bringing all kinds of bad things into their homes and they're getting taxed up the yin yang, we have allowed it. And I love going back to what just happened in Iran because of the fact that the president said a very key point. And he stated that, which everybody seems to have forgotten about, back on January 20th, 2017. He told the people of Iraq, we're giving you back your country. Take back your country. And he did the same thing in 2017 with us. But the people still aren't ready to take back their country because they do sit and rely on you and me and all the other people out there to tell them what to do. And they take it as gospel, right, wrong, or indifferent. And that's what's got to stop. That discernment has to come forefront. And there are too many people, we were discussing this, as you said, before the show, that the alternative media has literally become what I retired from 6 years ago. There is no difference. And there's no difference because the audience has remained the same. They all sit and accept what I'm saying, what you're saying, what Dave says, what Patriot Underground, everybody. They're all accepting what they say is gospel. And you still got this, use it for something useful and read up and go, oh, that's not really so. Or this is what the actual fact happens to be in regard to it. Or they left this out. You can't uneducate an educated mind. So it's, we're in kind of a rough spot. Now, that being said, and there are a lot of things that they've made it kind of painfully obvious, almost embarrassingly obvious, that they have taken over, that is now the white hat media. And they can't do it in such a way that people go, oh, something's not right here. What's going on? They have to still have a certain amount of subtlety there. But while they're doing it, and you see things like what happened with Guthrie, and what happens with just a whole bunch of stories where it's the same narrative that mainstream media has done for years. They have a story and everybody's enthralled and everybody's watching it. And then the next bleeder comes along and boom, that story just dropped dead. And this is now the big lead. And one of the things that's always gotten to me, especially being in the midst of the Great Awakening and watching what's going on, is why people, we're not far past the State of the Union address, how people can watch that, watch the other things that are going on in campaigns, et cetera, and not see, again, what we have allowed in regard to partisan politics to continue. And also, again, with laws and orders, we don't have to leave them in until the next election. There are ways to get rid of these people, and they are our employees. What's your opinion in regard to that? Because people, this, again, it's our country. We got to take it back.
Well, it goes back to, again, where how do you get people to, one, appreciate, well, there's not even really it's kind of like a brainstorm where it's not really a bullet point. It's like you could just put an array of everything up and go, because that's where most people are daily. The people I see in inboxes and comment boxes and everything that I look at, there's no principles, right? Because everything to them, it seems complicated to them. And a guy like me is going, look, keep it simple, easy. But they don't want that, right? Because they have been won by design, drama fed, and drama led. And then it became their custom and their norm. And it's not a norm and custom, period, shouldn't be, but it became theirs. And then a lot of them are still by choice, right? Because it goes back to the famous quote about insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And all I do is tell them is that, well, if you're tired of being angry, bitter, frustrated, mad, all these things, stressful, then there has to be a means to an end, right? What is that? And then right now, like to your point about, January the 20th, 2017, and then telling the people of Iran, hey, when we get done, take your nation back. They'll take theirs back. And they may be the ones that actually, I've said this over and over for about 4 years now, is that it's going to look like, and I think what's going to happen is Americans are going to get a dose of their own medicine. And I don't say our there because it's not me, but them, meaning that our nation was established the way it was established, the way that I date back. My legacy and lineage and heritage dates back to, I'm the son of the Revolution, son of the Confederacy and son of the Revolution, and I'm Native American. So having on two sides that my people were here first. And so that entity way back, well, they established everything. There have been constitutions before then. There have been battles before then, but the Revolutionary War was different because of the statement they made. And then they made that statement, and then they established that statement as their foundation. Move forward. So many Americans don't even know that, first off. Whether they appreciate it or not is another thing. But every other nation, it looks like it's going to be the leader in what America should be doing right now. And Americans are going to see all these other nations that are, one, been under their own tyranny for all these years, and they're tired of it. So actually, Americans stuck on their phones are going to see all these others over there who haven't had the same privilege, like Iran. And one of the Iranian reports a couple of years back specifically says about how, and you and I know this, but a lot of people don't. They've heard us say it. I know they've heard me say it, but about how Iran, they'll just shut the internet off on people. And they haven't had internet for a long time, and they call them blackouts. So their people don't even know what's going on in the world. And then what they're being told could be a bald-faced lie, which we know that's how the Ayatollah works. We know that's how the regime works, right? And so those people over there are appreciative. A lot of Americans don't know what the word appreciative means. They think they do, but they don't. And, and our nation is such a want. It is so materialistic. We're not a need nation. We're a want nation. When we have betting on sports and gambling and this and that, and we have sport, and we have every kind of sport. We have everything in the United States of America. And when you hear the people out there talking about, there's people suffering, it's small groups. And some of them, I'll be the big bad wolf. I'm like you. I'll be a big bad wolf. Some of them think they're in bad shape and they're not. right? Because it's all up here and it's all based on what they're wanting, not what they need, right? Because my grandparents and all of my family, farmers and different people, they lived with hardly anything and didn't even know they didn't have certain things. They didn't even know that they were technically poor or not, because they didn't live life going, are we rich or are we poor, right? They had food, water, shelter. Bingo. They were living life, right? And so we have based America on stuff that don't even matter. But our population's gotten us to where, like you say, it is everybody's fault. That's why I made a post today. I put up a post. Yeah, you did vote for this. And I twisted it, though, meaning that not only did you Republicans vote for President Trump, but you voted for all this past, all these years. You let this happen. And you got to stand in front of a mirror and say, I let it happen. It don't mean that you individually are a piece of you-know-what or anything, but everybody's got to get in the mirror and say, I let this happen. I've got to sharpen my skills and my thinking and my methodology and all these other things. You got to change everything. And change requires effort and work, right? And a lot of people don't even know they need change. So therefore, they don't know that they're not appreciated. So that's the biggest part. Now, I know for a fact we're still, by law, in a continuity government, a partial continuity government, which means we're still in a military government. And President Trump, they're restoring certain things along the way. And the Congress right now, they're all a part of this. But on the flip side of this, when we get back to a regular constitutional, full constitutional everything, yes, everybody's got to always, this is what we're talking about. We can clean out everything. And we have the trafficking, the money laundering, and all that. When they do present this back to the people, when we're ready to do that, at that point, people will know what did take place, what has taken place, and what is and what isn't. Right? And there's not going to be much in the isn't category. But this war, like I've been trying to explain to people, this war was not for you to fight. It's for you, but it wasn't you to fight from the standpoint. This was the military and our strategies and tactics, knowing what the deep state had done and their rings and their ties and all the stuff. This was that basically the good alliance versus this fraud alliance. Right. So we're taking them out for you. Right. And then when we hand it back to you, the fight for you, the real fight is maintaining and sustaining, prevention. And that's one of the key words in our military laws is prevention. Prevention. There's a quote from Hugo Grotius where we're talking about 1625, ladies and gentlemen, in our laws, right? Our military laws, where it talks about you don't judge a man on his past sins, but you try to prevent his future sins, right? That's all that is, ladies and gentlemen, is this one simple thing. What President Trump said in 2020, the cure cannot be bigger than the problem, and keep it simple, right? But it's a mindset. You got to flip your attitude. Instead of worrying about what's wrong and trying to make something wrong, and is it wrong? Is it going to go wrong? How about flip your attitude? Let's get something right. Let's just get one thing right today. Let's don't worry about everything right. Let's get one thing right, but let's flip that mindset. Right? You start reading what you're supposed to know, feeding your mind what you're supposed to know. There's an equal balance between an idle mind's the devil's workshop versus feeding your mind a bunch of garbage that your mind don't need. There's an equal balance there right in the middle, going what is and what isn't necessary for me to have. Right? So it's like it's kind of like basically Men in Black where they zap your mind, pew, and going, pew. All right, forget what you thought you knew. Even if some of it was good, let's just go ahead and start from a base model again. And then like a new piece of clay, like God talks about when people become born again, where it's like no one's judging you on your past. We're all here. We all go through the same things. We have different convictions. We have different struggles, but a new piece of clay. Let's start with a new piece of clay and let's go forward that way. And then, when you feed yourself with what a congressman is supposed to do, a representative, or a senator. A senator don't need to be telling the representative how to do his job, and the representative don't need to tell the senator. They need to stay in their lane. And that's what I've been trying to tell people is that I'm not saying that us veterans and all the secret military and all the military, we're the only ones that are, it's not just us working, and it's not just, but everybody's got to stay in their lane and recognize that this is a military operation. And you should be listening to military personnel, but you have a duty and a role to play as well, but stay in your lane, right? Do what you're supposed to be doing in your lane wherever you are, and stop trying to act like you're bigger than what you are when you're not, right? Just do what you're called to do in your lane and keep the integrity of every position, right? And if you're meant to call up like me, I'm working my way up for certain things with civilian sector, but in a different portion of military. Look, if I got what it takes, someone will recognize that. They'll pull me up, right? But I don't try to act bigger than my spot right now. I do what I'm supposed to be doing. And if everybody will make that applicable in their mind, right, for the integrity of each slot, then you'll see what Congress is supposed to be doing, what the president, the vice president is supposed to be doing. You'll see that checks and balance, and then the branches, what they're all doing, how they're all separate, but how they all flow, and they're in a sequence. And that's the key things that people have got to get back, is that foundation of how things operate and function. What does it look like? What is it supposed to do? And then you'll be able to see the ones who are abusing that. So everything we're doing right now is a reset, basically, where we can set the standard again of what is treason, what is a crime against humanity, what is espionage, or what are these things, right? So all that has to go through that process first, and that's what the continuity government's still doing. But when we get on the flip side, when the work starts, we cannot maintain and sustain if people don't know the basic, simple functions first. Because that is, when people say, I don't trust the government, I make a joke. I say, well, I don't trust you either, because you're negative and you have no knowledge, and we're the government, right? So that's why I always turn it on them. I'm like, well, I don't trust you either, right? Because you're negative and no knowledge. And that's what I try to tell people, is when you hear people say, I don't trust the government, you quickly tell them, the three most popular words in United States history are "we the people." You know what that means? We the government. We're the government, right? And so many people don't even know that little simple thing, that we hold that power. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That's what the whole Declaration of Independence is about. And by design, you never hear a liberal or a Democrat ever mention the Declaration of Independence. They never mention it. They never quote from it. They don't, because they hate it. They hate it. They hate the Constitution. They use the Constitution. That's why they butcher it and twist it so much, because they hate it. And they use that as a tool against you. And to now, like in another kind of context, what you were saying earlier, now in reality, to someone like me, they matter. But from the standpoint for the people out there with these podcasters, when you see on like a profile, oh, I'm a patriot and a this and a this. No. It's more than putting words up, typing it. You have to, if you're an influencer, you need to demonstrate you know every aspect of our foundation, ideologies, philosophies, and if you don't live it and breathe it and walk it and talk it like it's your second nature versus talking about sports or your wife or your kids or whatever it may be, if it's not right here, it ain't real, right? And if you have to look like you're reading a script or something always on, it's one thing to have notes and different things, stay on point. But when you're looking like, just, it's got to come right here. And it's like President Trump told everybody, isn't it nice to have a president who doesn't have to read from a teleprompter? Because he's got it here. It's here. That's called passion. It's called love. It's being there for the right reasons. And so that's the stuff. If people would, again, have a solid foundation, they'll be able to see those fruits and appreciate those fruits and be have gratitude towards it, thankful, blessed. Now, I think that we have a script that's going to flip everybody. I naturally, if I knew exactly what they were going to be doing, and I think I do, I can't tell it anyway. But I know there is a way to flip more and more and more. And so far, the strategy of chess has been genius. But there is a way to get people in more of a, where they're going to see something all at once. and not just, pick their phone up and a few see it. But I've been talking about it a lot, but I don't think it's going to be more in a doomsday way. But right now, I mean, if people that are, the audience that are more obviously awake and been following you and I, or me separate, you separate, whatever, but anyone who's been following, I mean, look at the timing. Iran, Bill, Hillary, Obama. They got Joe all of a sudden again, a 2-minute video the other day. And Joe's, he's real sporadic, even though I know it's an actor, but for the ones that don't know that, if you're looking at it from a natural, thinking it's real situation, he's all over the board. He's like saying that he was the one who reduced the drug prices. No, executive orders by President Trump did that. And then he confirms his trips to Ukraine in 2014 specifically. And I'm the only one that's broken down Ukraine a lot from the military aspect. And my blueprint is all over 2014. So, it just shows people that they're bringing all this at once to the surface. Israel, Iran, the biggies, Russia, Ukraine. They're bringing all these big ones up all at one time. And, the trash talking and all that, you expect that, right? That's called projection, ladies and gentlemen. When someone's projecting something like, you're doing this, and all President Trump's done is enforce the laws. This is all he really had to do is just enforce the laws. Because enforcing the laws that's prescribed on paper exposes what they were doing that wasn't prescribed on paper. And it's genius. It's genius in one way, but to like chess players or strategists like me, it's real easy, right? So I'm not knocking the people that it is true chess to, but to people like me, it's like it's relatively easy to see the moves and okay, what's next and what's coming and how they're going to do it and what they're going to make it look like and yada yada yada. But at the same time, it's world history, man. I mean, it's just I had someone ask me yesterday, last night, what do you think? And I'm like, these people should know me by now, and I'm not knocking them if they ever see this. I'm not knocking you. You don't know who you are. But, they were asking about World War III. Oh, people are thinking we're going to World War III. Ladies and gentlemen, we struck Iran last year, and the Ayatollah to you wasn't dead. If we were going to World War III, the Ayatollah and his people would have reneged then. They would have retaliated then. How are they going to retaliate now when about 50 of them are with their virgins wherever they are? If people would apply that, and I'm not knocking the person who asked me, I'm not knocking, but this is me, like you and I talk about having if I was sitting in a coffee shop or a cordial conversation, I'm trying to show you how to think logically, how to think outside the box, critically, divergently, convergently, analytically. I mean, I can show you all the different thought processes of how just don't worry about being wrong. Just teach yourself to think. Don't worry about being wrong. Just learn to think and go, wait, we struck them hard. Like we knocked out major facilities. If they were going to retaliate, they would have retaliated what they had left. Not all. So we only took out 3 or 4 locations the last time. And the map they showed this time was dot, 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 dot. You see all the dot, 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 dots that could have retaliated, folks? And they didn't retaliate then? We're not going to war like that. And now they're using the term war right now just because that's what gets people engaged and gets them, as you and I know, it gets them locked in, gets them engaged, right? We got you locked in. You taking the bait. It's not a war. It's a strategic operation to knock out all this quote unquote diplomacy that Jimmy Carter all the way up. They continue, right? So, anyway.
Well, that's where it is. But you're also, these people are dealing, and I can't think of another way really to express it without catching a whole bunch of flack for it. But you're dealing with people who are coming from a point of ignorance. They really are. When you look at most of the population of the United States, you talk about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and, what our founding fathers had in mind. And these people can't even tell you the three branches of government. So you're dealing.
68%. I don't know where they get the number, but on average, I've Googled this before. I just always use a variation, but 68 to 75% of 350 million people. That's 220 plus million people that can't just say three words. But President Trump this and this and this and that. And this. Yeah, I don't know.
They don't even know that it's not a democracy. It's a republic because they've been torn away from the Pledge of Allegiance where you say,
well, and here's the other thing. Here's the other thing. By old school integrity, and you know this, and I know you're gonna love this, but by old school integrity, if I was going to use something as a reference or just something that, in conversation, but like the Democrats do, or the liberals out there, we need to abide by the Constitution, da, 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 da. Just saying that out of your mouth means that you need to know the Constitution. You need to know who wrote the Constitution. You need to know how the Constitution was formed, where it came from, what gave it life, which was the Declaration of Independence, which was the Revolutionary War. But then by integrity purposes, because that Constitution came from that kind of setting and foundation, you either got to be all for it or abolish all of it. Because when you say something towards President Trump, and he's talking about a third and fourth term, right? And they're like, that's against the Constitution. No, it's not. It's not. Article 2, Clause 1, Section 1. It is not. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say Congress is to put term limits. It doesn't. And two authors of the Federalist Papers, one of those being the sole author of that said same Constitution, James Madison, in his Federalist Papers, but also Alexander Hamilton, both of those said that presidents should be able to serve as kings as long as the people voted them in. Which means if you got elected at 40 and you can live to be 90 and everybody kept voting them in. So by integrity, what I would tell Democrats or anybody out there, but it's like, okay, by true integrity, if you wanted to look like old school integrity and not look like a dunce and all the other things that the old school would have labeled you as like, okay, you have no principles, no standards, you have no foundation, you're wishy-washy. Right? They hated that. They love people who are, if you were against me, at least be against me. Be willing to stand on the other side of the line and make a case while you're completely against me. There was more integrity in that than someone using the same verbiage and same language, but butchering and twisting it. Because by the true integrity, if you're going to say the Constitution, but you're going to turn around and say that this, and this, that is not accurate, and it's coming from the same people, like, by integrity purposes, you're butchering all aspects of it. Going like, you might as well just abolish the whole thing and not even just say, hey, look, why don't you guys write something else? Why don't you, write your own thing and then propose it? That's what a lot of people don't know about the Bill of Rights. It was written as a second constitution and proposed to James Madison and the Federalists by the Anti-Federalists. They thought the state should have more power. James Madison wrote the Bill of Rights, though, on their behalf. That way it didn't get either overbalanced towards that. And then somewhere down the line go, we like this better and let's abolish the Constitution, right? So he wrote it as amendments, meaning that these are rights for people. This is a framework for our government, right? So people, government. But a lot of people don't know that simple thing that back then, and it wasn't, their differences were tiny, especially after the war. Their differences were little, right? They were just so happy to go, you know what? We don't want to fight. We don't want to do that. But that people don't even realize that that's what they were written as. And then even that, they were all written in a sequence. They were all written together on purpose. You couldn't have one without the other. And look at all the people who will butcher that. Oh, the Second Amendment, they didn't have machine guns back then. It's like, you don't understand. If your mindset is doing what it's supposed to be doing, then someone could have a freaking World War III cannon, which I'm joking. There's no World War III, but you could have a cannon from the Civil War that's all hyped up to battle in today's technology, the most lethal weapon of all. And someone's not going to fire it if they're not being infringed on, right? And if people just get that, but they don't, you know.
You mean a weapon of mass destruction?
Or even worse, you know, just like, you know, the true nuke, you know. But it goes back to like even something as simple as like when President Trump left the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty with Russia, people would think, now wait, a treaty, isn't that supposed to be a truce? So wouldn't leaving a treaty mean blah, 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 blah? When you go read when he left the treaty, it invokes a mutually assured destruction clause, which is a Nash equilibrium, which means that, okay, now if United States and let's say Cuba fires a nuclear weapon at the U.S., we have the automatic go ahead to fire back. And Cuba knows this, right? So basically, it's testing you. Do you really want to do this? Because we may be bigger than you and annihilate you, period. And some of us survive. And so it really exposes, again, what we were talking about earlier. What is prescribed on paper? And what are they doing back here? Every one of Obama's executive orders, if people would go read those, it exposes like what were they doing with Ukraine. Just before Obama declared an executive order with a national emergency with Ukraine, he declared one with Russia that he terminated in 2015, the year after all the big movements in Ukraine in 2014. Now, why would he, in the whole executive order was about nuclear weapons. Why would he terminate that and then have 4 executive orders in 1 year, unusual and extraordinary threats, of anyone who's doing certain things with the government of Ukraine? See, so it completely highlights, directly pinpoints to their money laundering, biolabs, and everything that we know that's been in Ukraine, that's already been told to the public. So see all of what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. That's why President Trump, if people would just pay attention, he didn't start this war with them. Obama and Hillary and that crew did all this because Putin was not the president of Russia from 2008 to 2012. When was Uranium One, President Trump called the greatest scandal in U.S. history, especially Russia? 2010, right in the middle when Putin wasn't president. So Putin, whenever Obama terminated this executive order, Putin saw how he'd been played for a fool because they were setting up Ukraine with nuclear facilities, biolabs, and all this. He got played for a fool. He had every reason to pop that soccer ball on President Trump and capitulate. Be like, you know what? I was not the president from 2008 to 12. Yes, I was the prime minister. Yes, I know certain things, but I didn't make the ultimate decisions. I'll play ball. You know, and if people would just learn the things you're supposed to know, I mean, it truly is a true case of that, you know, like when a dog is hungry and you don't give him just regular old dog food. You throw some bacon fat down there and that dog's just licking, just going, let me go. Like you're holding the bat. Like, hold on, let me get it all down because I know you're going to make a mess. You're trying to hold the bat with their collar and they're just pulling, right? That's what every American would be like if they would appreciate the real what is going on versus like we're talking about. Forget all this drama with all this surface level, all the other things that's been put on you. Forget about all that. Even though right now, as we were talking about preset again, the Smith-Mundt of 48, you know, it's still by design that they did it on purpose, but then we got to use it right now because we got to finish all these operations that people, if we told people what was going on all along the way, that you'd have the dissenters already who still don't understand. Then you'd have the rubberneckers, as I call it, the ones who would get in the way, right? That's why I have my badge. I have my all my DOW credentials and all that stuff that you've had before, and I've had a little extra with some things, but for military sake. But that's why I don't go with the military, because I've been in the military one. I know they don't like the press, only because a lot of times the press gets in the way, right? They just got it. So like, that's what would happen if they forecasted everything along the way. You'd have people doing it, because a lot of it's been in the U.S. too. So you'd have people obstructing, whether it was be purposely, like some with the ICE raids, some purposely, some would do it just because they want to see it, right? Oh, I want to watch this, and so we would never get anything done if it was, fully all hands off. And go, okay, here's everything back the way it's supposed to be, but we're still operating. So if a lot of people would just apply it that way, but and that's only this is only geared, that's comments only geared to the people that's sitting on the fence still. Like, patriots know what's going on, they get it. But then you got all the ones over here in the target audience, they're just like, I don't know. But a lot of them have flipped. Not all. I don't think it's a lot, but I think there's a portion out there, because they're following what we're talking about. These pushers that look just like it's always looked. They call themselves different, but they're not. I'm like, you're not. You're not. But
looking at it, first of all, everything has kind of been very much so the way that Hollywood has produced it for the past X number of years. It's really hiding in plain sight. I mean, they're really putting everything right out there in front of you. You just have to know what you're looking at, and you have to be able to see it. But it still does puzzle me, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because I wanted to talk about that. Why, when you consider what the mainstream media has done for decades, and what basically how they've been protected by law, or at least their businesses have been protected by law, with the Smith Modernization Act from 2012, which allowed them to go and start putting out propaganda. Why, knowing that all that, and it's not going to enable them to reveal any more or any less, because they still don't do their jobs to begin with, and they're still not journalists. But why has that not been repealed, so that as they continue not to do their jobs, and as they continue to editorialize instead of putting out the facts, they can be held liable for it, which right now, because it's a law, they can't be held accountable for it.
Well, I think that's the beauty, if you will. It's the only other way to really say it. But once people out there, not the patriots, this is for the target audience if you're listening, but the ones who want to know, and you're still putting pieces together, this is part of strategy. This is part of military strategy, military tactics, because I can show you, like, obviously the top down, right? Airplane view, the very top, up here in the stratosphere level, looking down, and then work our way down, right? And so I could show the military government, continuity government, government exile, puppet government, all that, right? Those are all straight up military tactics. They're all lawful. They're all constitutional. They're the Winthrop, the military law and precedents, but they're constitutional. There's 3 jurisdictions. So once people know that setup, then what's the goal of this? What are our goals? What are our objectives? What are we trying to accomplish? What's our missions? Right. And that's, again, annihilate the deep state. Their rhetorics, their ideologies, their quote unquote democracy, their rings, their trafficking, their cartels, the money laundering, everything. Right. That. And then once we get that to a quell, right, well, we're resetting. So 2017 to 21, all the unique laws and orders that were invoked. And it's not that they're so much unique. because there's just straight up executive orders with national emergencies, then also the military strategies and tactics of your irregular and unconventional warfare that set up this, what I call the blueprint. That goes into place. It's the resetting of the legislative branch. And then, like I say, it's this simple. All President Trump had to do was enforce the laws as prescribed. Because then when they start yelling, even in real time, this is against the law, you can't do that. It's in the law. If it's in the law, you kept it in law. So it's not unlawful. It may be unconstitutional, but you kept it in law. So it's in law, right? So then you can deem something to be unconstitutional from the standpoint of, look, a military government and a military occupation means there's no constitutional law anymore. Temporary, right? We're suspending that because this couldn't be done. This couldn't be upheld. And that's what our law war manual talks about, is that when the legitimate government cannot perform because of a military government and it's got a bunch of and/ors, meaning that we could go ahead and take it over as a military and you're not going to do it anyway. Or there's some ors there, and the ors could be light, starting, and they're all out. It's all outlined in the law war manual. But it's when the legitimate government cannot function. They cannot uphold their duties. Well, that was deemed by us, the military, to say, well, you weren't doing your duties all these years anyway. You've misled the people. You've lied to the people. You've used laws and orders. You've used the rhetoric, but you haven't been doing what's prescribed on paper. You've been doing all these other things back here. So in essence, liberals would call it a military coup. You can call it whatever you want. Like I tell people, it's still lawful, right? It's a military government using martial law and other things, but it's all constitutional. They'll call it a coup and try to mislead their people for a while, but until it's unveiled. So you have that. And then the 2021 to 2025, right before that, President Trump invoked the continuity of government. Then the most recent to date, to March 2026, to date, the most recent order of succession with the Department of War is Executive Order 13963, which was 3 days after that invocation of a continuity of government. That's the most recent. Every president has had an order of succession except for quote unquote Joe, right? So that shows you there. And then President Trump filed December the 14th via the state of Texas, the Supreme Court versus 7 swing states. He never before in U.S. history, the swing states of one election were the next election swing states. Never. He won the same swing states in 24, the same swing states of 2020. In 2023, August 18th, he put a tweet out that the Supreme Court needs to look at these 7 swing states. Well, if he won them in 24, that tells you that was ironed out, because we know there's been fraud and cheating. So he didn't win 7 just by, mere chance. So that's going to show people later down the road. That's a whole other topic, obviously. All right, but that was December the 14th, 2020. December the 14th, 2020, same day, he went to the Army-Navy game. Quote-unquote, Joe was an athlete, standout athlete in high school football. And his nickname was the Dash. Well, go figure, right? But he never went to an Army-Navy game. Now, that don't make sense, especially when you love a sport and you played a sport and you were a standout athlete in it, and you don't go to a game that they showed Obama at basketball games. He didn't. I don't know if he even played in high school. I mean, we have no verification of his high school and his motherland, his native country, not Hawaii, right? Which that'll come out later, right? But for the sake of just short time, he got to go to games. President Trump, if you go back and look at all the headlines of the Army-Navy game in 2020, it says the 45th president is at the game. Why didn't they say that's his last game? Nowhere in the headline, nowhere in any articles does it say, President Trump at his last Army-Navy game. Nowhere. It says the 45th president is at the Army-Navy game. As if 45 ain't going anywhere. Right? This was mainstream media. We're not talking about, a bunch of, Republican conservative. So see, people apply that. Then that led to the January. January 6th has an answer to it. I don't have time to do all that. But then the funeral. By Army regulations on January the 20th, 2021, ladies and gentlemen, Army, that's my beloved branch. Not knocking on my other brothers and sisters, but that's my regulations, 600-25, the whole booklet. That whole day was violations of it. And the 3 cannons at Arlington, that's not a 21-gun salute for an inauguration. That's a funeral. All right. And when he raised his right hand, violation of the 20th Amendment. If you watch the new Melania documentary, she says we couldn't move in, we couldn't do certain things until 12:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They put emphasis on that. They put emphasis on the 45-47. That, ladies and gentlemen, he raised his right hand at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when he took the oath. Then the speech started at 11:52. All right. Well, after that oath, as soon as the last word said, 4 ruffles. They call them ruffles and flourishes. 4. For that. On the 4th one, simultaneous Hail to the Chief play and the 21-gun salute is supposed to start. That did not take place on January the 20th, 2021. They didn't even show the cannons at Arlington until later. All right. But even those are still the funeral. So see, they showed you that. That was moving into your military occupation. That's going into your continuity government. Now where we are is the military government itself. President Trump's doing exactly what President Eisenhower, who was a 5-star general, both, he established the Presidential Emergency Action Documents and the continuity government. And then his military government was what would follow, meaning like, okay, until we can get the constitutional government back in place and all the right people doing the right things, saying what they're supposed to be saying, doing what they're supposed to be doing. President Eisenhower's original plan for that were businessmen and veterans. If you look at all of President Trump's nominations for ambassador, now not all ambassadors are chief of missions, but all chief of missions are ambassadors. Every single ambassador that President Trump has put into place is either a businessman or woman and or special operations retired or veteran. The same exact plan as President Eisenhower, who established it. All right. And then it goes back to that 21 to 25. People say, well, why did we have to do that? If President Trump was really president the whole time, why? Undesirability, ladies and gentlemen. It's where we were in history. You brought it on. You allowed it. And we're not calling you complacent and lazy and ignorant because we want to. It's because of what was displayed, the fruits, right? And everybody has to take account for it, whether it was really you or not, whether it was really you or your mom and daddy or your grandma and grandpa. Everybody has to take accountability for it. That is what we, the military, came to was a crossroads of going, okay, how do we do this? Because if you give what the people, President Trump said, give the people what they want, drama. They love drama, so we can get that's easy, right? But we have a strategy and tactic where if you gave President Trump 8 years straight out the gate, because you're uneducated, because you don't know the Constitution doesn't say term limits, well, we didn't have time to stop and go, hey, by the way, it's the Constitution that, would you believe it or not? Would you support it or not? We don't care about that. We don't need your support yet. This is one of those, we'll ask forgiveness later if you don't like it. But after we get through all this and you see what's cleaned out and income tax is gone and you ain't got 2 and 3 jobs and all, if you're complaining after all that, they better not let old Derek get you on a boat and take you somewhere because I'm taking you to Tasmania. Like we're going far, far away, right? It's going to be like a fairy tale, far, far away, right? And then you're going to be on America's Most Wanted list if you ever try to come back, and I'll be in control of that. Joking, but they should do that. So the 2021, 2025, right? That whole thing was undesirable. Nobody wanted to go through that. But we had a plan and a strategy to go, hey, we can do 4 years, pull back, military government, continuity government, government exile, and then so you get 12 years to do a massive wipeout. And then when you get people over here about year number 10 or 11, and everybody's starting to, you hit the quail marks where it's like everybody's getting more awake. And then the more we show you all the way down, then you get more quail, meaning you get more calm, and you're going, oh, because a lot more people are waking up. There's a lot more waking up. Well, you get to that year, and then you're going to be more appreciative when we tell you what's been going on and how we tell you, right? So there's that strategy, all right, in place. Now we're going through the judicial branch resetting. That's why it's judge this, judge that, judge, court, Supreme Court this, judge blocked this, judge did this, judge. It's all it's been in the news from January 20, 2025 to the present day. Judge, court, this, that. It's a resetting. So every branch is going through its resetting. And there's actual documentation for this. Like the government in exile, January the 1st, 2021. January the 1st is a FEMA document called Reconstitution of the Executive Branch. All right. And you saw that, right? And Reconstitution and all the different things that were changed during that time period. And then there's things that, quote unquote, Joe did not do that absolutely prove it too. He never had a Title 10 or Title 32 invocation. All right. Military orders are not continuous. So how are the troops at the border in Texas? How are they all over New York operating? How are they going anywhere? Joe has no Title 10 or Title 32 invocation anywhere. So see, there's things in military that should show you, and that's the stuff that people really should appreciate to go, wait, military orders are not continuous. They need congressional authorization under their unconstitutional, even though the War Powers Act is unconstitutional. Right now, President Trump, we're using that against them when they say that's against the law. You can't do that. You need congressional authorization. He's got that. December the 20th, 2019, Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. He's got congressional authorization. Joe don't. For those of you who think Joe was real, he wasn't. President Trump verifies this. Turkish president, September 2025. Hey, while I was in exile, he said exile 3 times. There's been capitulation, white flag of surrender, occupied country, puppet government, all this mentioned all over mainstream media and President Trump for the last 4 years. Those are all validation, ladies and gentlemen. Those are all law war manual terms. And then the word restoration he started using in 2024 in the campaign. The Great Liberation starts November the 5th. The Great Restoration starts January the 20th. Starts, not finishes. Starts. Restoration. Restoration, ladies and gentlemen, that word, restoration is in our law of land warfare. It's also in other military precedents, etc. But it's in the law of land warfare, and it's specifically attached to a military government. I mean, you can't get it. There's so many validations of that. So see, the media, when you reset the bar on, hey, what is treason? What is crimes against humanity? What is espionage? What are all these different layers of crimes? When you reset the standard on that, and there will be arrests and people will chill out, but you know, we got to do all this other stuff first. Get it cleaned out, get it ready, and then there will be establishments of that. The media also has to face circumstances where, you know, hey, you can't just say what you want to say, right? And why would you want to say what you want to say without actual facts of what you're saying? It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Why are you just trying to ruin somebody's life? Why are you trying to write something that's not true and not accurate, right? If you're given a position and you're a good writer and you're a good author or a good journalist, whatever, you're already good. So why don't you want to do something that humanity can chew on for the right reasons, right? So it goes back to that, hey, we're going to have a resetting of what is and what isn't a First Amendment, because you can't just say, oh, that's my First Amendment, and mislead thousands of people to go drink some Kool-Aid in a field somewhere. We know about that. We have history of why the slogan "Drink the Kool-Aid" came from. Then we have David Koresh and all these other people who made people think they were God and Jesus and all these other things. And I mean, at what point do you go, okay, well, they got their own property, they can do what they want, versus, hey, there's people dying over there. These people are drinking Kool-Aid thinking that he's Jesus, and they're going to some paradise and they're killing people. At some point, there's a common sense to everything where we have to apply common sense and logic again and go, okay, you can do certain things, but you can't do this, right? When it comes to crime, right? And we get to deem that. That's where we, the people, all deem, okay, well, are you okay with 800 people going to a field and drinking Kool-Aid because that guy says, hey, I'm Jesus, and if you drink this, we're going to paradise. Well, I guess if the majority of people thought that's okay, then the majority get to rule that in. But majority of people are not going to rule that way. Majority of people do have common sense and decency to go, no, that's barbaric or that's past. So see, with the media, if you start with the top and work, I think working with the top and punishing the top, it'll set the new standard to work its way down. And we have examples of that. The Associated Press being the appeals court upholding the ban on them at the White House, Mar-a-Lago. That shows wartime as well. That shows the military government. That's 47 U.S. Code, Section 606. The president can control media, press, etc. during a wartime. So there's that. The View's under investigation. That's the one that surprises me with people, drama out there, drama-loving people. Like, I have shared that over and over that the View is being investigated, and people are like, and I'm like, y'all love drama, and this you still not even biting on that. But anyway, that's all FCC and the 47 U.S. Code. Again, all those are taking them down. Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, all these different people that's been mentioned, and President Trump hammering them and talking about they're terrible, and Bill Mayer and all these different people. All that's by design. And it's to reset the standard, right? And I know people are fatigued, and they think that somehow people like me or you or us are just dragging this out. And I'm like, if you read the laws and orders, you'd see it's not dragging out. It's an operation. It's not going on your time. It's not going as fast as you want it to. But if you knew what it was cleaning out and what it's going to reset, then you know your role of what your role is. Your fight comes when it is completely handed back over, and when we are out of the continuity government by law and we're back in a full constitutional, that's when your fight really comes of how do we maintain and sustain this. But other than that, I mean, that's why they're using that, is we're using all their unconstitutional tactics back on them. And it's kind of like reversing out a code or something that someone coded bad, right? Sometimes you have to reverse it out. And then when you use it against them, well, once that thing has run its thread and its course, then they're not going to run that thread anymore. And this is a lot different than a code. But when you use all their laws against them, that they said that, like what are some about the executive orders, the IEPA, that's just one act. Well, if it was lawful and constitutional the whole time that Obama and Carter and all these others were invoking it, and all of a sudden it's unlawful because President Trump, then see, ladies and gentlemen, they're trying to teach you a principle, right? They're trying to teach you what that principle is, right? It's not about the drama behind it. And, he can't do that. He can't. No, if it's in law, he can, right? And Abraham Lincoln was quoted on this. A lot of people love Abraham Lincoln. I don't know how, because, I know how I love him, but I don't know how they do, because most of them don't know anything about him. Except for a few things, and that's just real surface level stuff. But Abraham Lincoln's the one that said a bad law needs to be enforced strictly, double, because the people need to see it and then express their dissent. I'll take that one step further for you, ladies and gentlemen, and say, how did it get in law? Aren't you supposed to be we the people, the government? You're supposed to be the one saying, we need this bill. We need this bill passed and made into a law, right? So I'll take it one step further. It's like, how did it get in law if it's a bad law? That's where you, the people, have to get more strategic, critical, strategic, analytical, everything, and sharpen your skills. But I think it's genius to take all the tactics and then flip it on them, because it exposes them more by prescribing it on paper. If they do project, you can't do that. Well, all you got to do is say, look at the date right here. Your people did this. And see, President Trump hadn't done that, which shows us an operation. But that's all he'd have to do if he was a regular president, which he's not, and it's not going to happen that way. But if he was, that's all he'd have to do is, every law that I'm using, not the orders, but every law that I'm using is not most of them, not the executive orders, but most of your foundational laws that have been amended through the most recent foundational law, one of them was 1995. So that shows that people don't read. And most of the laws that President Trump's using 95 and back, outside of your executive orders.
You see, which is something I've railed about forever already. When you're dealing with laws, there's a reason that the elections cost so much. I mean, never mind the fact that they're rigged. There's a reason that they cost so much, because who pays for these campaigns? And why do they put all this money into these campaigns? Because they want to control the people who make the laws. And they make the laws in favor of the people with money, not in favor of the people that allegedly they're there to serve. And that gets back, which is why I purposely saved it for now, which we discussed before the show, people's duties as Americans, which is something that we've kind of brushed on it in a bunch of different ways tonight. But people have neglected. We talk about people's rights. Rights come with responsibilities. Without the responsibilities, the rights mean nothing. It's just anarchy. So they come with responsibilities, but nobody anymore wants to be responsible for anything. And you have certain duties as an American. And probably the single most important yet basic one is to vote. And people can't be bothered. And they've made up the excuse, my vote's not going to make a difference anyway. My vote doesn't matter. It's rigged. It's fixed. Not paying attention to the fact that if you don't do it, then yes, it is fixed, and you have fixed it because you've given them the election by not showing up and doing your duty. So given that, where do we go? How do we get people? It's hard enough to get people to understand what their rights are legitimately, because everybody espouses what their rights are when they don't know what they're talking about. But to get them to legitimately understand what their rights are and really to enforce them and uphold their duties as Americans so we can get to where we need to be.
Well, that goes back to, like I was saying, earlier today, even on my page, or pages, plural, but when you look at my conversion ratio, it sounds like I'm about the numbers, and I'm not. But what I'm trying to get to people is that when people follow me, and for fact, the ones that follow me, and it's been following me for a while now, the ones who have read and studied already, it is. I was talking to a friend today, and she's a professor, and I'm like, if I was wrong already, whether you think I'm real or not, and really an operator and all this other thing, exclude all that. Don't worry about if you don't know me personally, or you're like, where's this guy come from? How can he know? Exclude that. If I was wrong about anything, she asked me, she's like, what's your demographic? What's your, it's like, well, it's females that are 45 to 55 years old. I know it right off the bat because Facebook gives you this stuff. And I was just curious myself over the course of time, who is and who isn't. And it's like I told her, I'm like, if you can make it funny, you can make it humorous, and I do a lot because we're human. We need to have some humor with it, the reality and the humor. But in reality, being humorous, if I was wrong, look at me. I'm a single guy, right? Not married, no kids. Now that don't necessarily have everything to do with it, but it does in another manner because I'm a younger fella still. I'm a young man, and I'm sitting here telling you with a banner on my page that says "fact check this," which means, hey, I'm pretty accurate, right? And I haven't been wrong, and it's not about being right or wrong, but I'm saying here it is. Well, if there was something in any of my here it is, my demographic would have already found it. Because the humor part are females. When you tell a female, especially a male tells a female that this is a fact, challenge accepted. Because females are going to be like, I'm going to find out, right? And I'll never forget, I was on this podcast one time, and she don't even mind me telling it, but it's Dr. Jason Dane, but it's his one of his girl works with him and stuff. But you know, her husband's a veteran too, and I believe he's with the Marine Corps, which they take it. Every branch should be as hardcore as the Marine Corps as far as their love for their branch, etc. And she told me just straight out, it's so funny. She's like, and the first time I was ever on their podcast, it's like, she said, I'm going to be honest. The first time I ever heard you, I thought you were full of, it said it, you know, and she said, but like you said, females, we dig, we read, we take every reference. And she said, you said it best. We read it front, back, up, down, diagonal, sideways, forensic. We'll get a black light. We'll do everything we got to do. We're gonna look at it. We're gonna find out. And she was like, she went to Dr. Dan. Was like, oh my God, it's all here. It's all there. It's real, literally in laws and orders. It's literally there. And then the visuals are there for every law and order. There's a visual, verbal and visual. And so, you know, like I tell, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about, it's like, you don't have to like it, but it depends on where is your standpoint on it. But if you don't have a standing point and you're just arguing something like we're talking about a while ago, the three branches, you can't even name those, but you just want to be in the comment box. You just want to say something. It goes back to what I try to tell people. It's like, I'm the kind, if I don't know anything, I don't want to be humiliated. And if everybody will walk around thinking like, you know, my dad, engineer mind, just like that. He's a 180 IQ. First off, he's beyond genius, but he can just design, and he don't even have to write it down. He can do this, do that, and it's a marvel, whatever, right? I'm not that, but you wouldn't catch me on no engineering page even making a comment towards something, except for if I was like, man, this is awesome, or that's. But other than that, I wouldn't be. Why would I try to put input on something that I have no input for, right? And that's the thing. Like you're going to be found out eventually when you don't have legit input, especially if you're trying to be a part of something, right? It's like when people copy and paste things or they'll plagiarize. I told someone not long ago, and they went viral. It's a certain person, but I'm like, you're copying and pasting. You're using other things. But if you are the one that goes viral, then guess what you got to do? You got to always forever copy and paste, or you're going to have a hard fall because you're not even on anything that was original anyway. All right. And when people are looking at you like you're an OG or something that's authentic, it's a hard fall. So getting to just Americans, I'm like, look at the comment boxes daily on social media. I mean, I wish there was a way. I don't know. Maybe AI can do it. I don't know. But I wonder how many on average comments there are a day on every social media. I mean, it's got to be astronomical, right? And so it's getting to people without saying, look, I'm the one you talking about, you know, ruffling feathers. I'm a feather ruffler, right? And the way I project things sometimes, I don't mean to be like you are stupid and dumb and like I'm just like you're the only one in the screen on the other side listening, and I'm saying you. I put it in first person form though, where it's applicable to people, and it's like I've told people, if it strikes a nerve, then it probably was meant to strike a nerve, right? If you're feeling guilty towards something that's said to you, then you're the recipient of it. Like people have called me names and all kinds of things, and it don't affect me because I'm like, well, I'm not a recipient of your negativity or whatever it is because it don't affect me, right? I've built for this. I was made for this. I was born for this. I was called for this, right? And I was put here for a reason, so it don't affect me, right? So if people would get in that mindset that, look, whether it was exactly you lived through it. You have lived through this regime that we're taking down. You lived through it. You did keep voting for it, but if you didn't vote, then you need to feel guilty, because every veteran that I talk about, now I'm alive, obviously, but my grandfather, all the different people that fought for this nation, for you, they fought for your vote. They did fight for that. That is the freedom you're allowed because of that fight. All right. There's a lot of wars we should have never been in. That's neither here nor there. It still goes back to, though, the heart. The heart of a warrior is that I said, yes, I will. It's not knocking you because you didn't say, yes, you will. And yes, yes, I'll go. It's not knocking that. But because there are certain people that have said, I'll do it. I'll go. Send me. I'll do it. You got to take that mentality and go, you know what? Someone said I will where you didn't have to. Because I'm not going to knock you for not doing it. I tell people all the time, I would never want to draft, because that would get the wrong people in the way anyway, because their heart wouldn't be there. All right. And there's already many, many veterans, and I'm the one that gets called names, some, not a lot, but from a few out there, because I say the same thing. I'm like, I'm one, so I can say it. There's so many out there. They said the oath because they had to, not because they wanted to. They repeated Army or whatever branch regulations they were in. They repeated it because they had to, not because they wanted to. Right? So there's a difference in having to and want to. Same thing with President Trump and the teleprompter again. I know this stuff because I love it. I can repeat it because I love it. And you can tell it's not memorized because it flows. It has a visual and a validation. Every American, in reality, you should look like me, because everything that I talk about, majority of it, outside of the laws and orders, majority is your foundation. It's how we're here. The United States of America. My family, my lineage brought it here. That's why I'm so passionate and love it. But we want you here. We want the right people here. But we want you to love it the same way we love it. We want you to appreciate it the same way we appreciate it. Right? And it's the same thing with the Native American spirit. That's also my family. We think 7 generations out. So I live my life today as if I'm going to hand it to that 7th generation, right? And if every generation has that mentality, then you're never going to catch up with that 7th generation, because you're always going to be thinking for them. And that's why it is great to be a veteran, but also be in a strategic operation in the place that I've been put in, little man on the totem pole, but I'm a notch of it, to show people that, look, if you'll start thinking for your neighbor first, not yourself first, always think for someone else first, right? And if everybody will make that reciprocal, right, then it won't ever be about yourself. You'll always be about your neighbor or your family member or your spouse or your whoever, coworker, name it, just name it, people, right? And if everybody will start doing that, knowing what you're supposed to be knowing, doing what you're supposed to be doing, do unto others, mind your own business, clean up your own backyard, all the great songs that we have, right? Everything, put that in as your formula, right? And stop looking for the wrong in people. Stop trying to make something wrong if it ain't there, all right? And start looking for the good in people, and then start doing all those things in an order. And I don't think they're necessarily in a chronological order. They're just a formula. Then feed your mind on what you're supposed to know, which, again, it's going to come natural for some when you know what to look for, but it may be just a local level. It could be a state. It could be a federal. But get plugged in to know how the 3 branches operate and function. Get plugged in to know why and how they wrote them in the sequence, individually, separately. Get to know that, right? And it's not difficult. It really isn't. And it's not something that you just got to sit every night and just, turn the TV off for all night and not watch a favorite show or watch a movie, but do everything in balance. Like I tell people, do it in balance. Have a time where you sit with your wife, your husband, your kids, or whatever it is, and just know the stuff you need to know. And once it's committed to the heart, it's kind of like the Bible says, once you have it here, well, it'll be here. You won't have to repeat it as much as you think. Like, I don't walk around all day going, oh, Title 50, Chapter 33, you know, blah, blah. You know, I get on an ATV and ride. I go fishing. I go hunting. You know, I go sit with my friends and family. I don't sit there the whole time and go, oh, da, 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 da. You know, I want to sometimes because I know that, you know, I love it that much, but you'll have it. It won't leave you. And the Bible is specific on that, put it in your heart, because if it wasn't there, you'll have it in your heart. And you wouldn't need it. You wouldn't even need it anymore physically in physical form, because you would have consumed it so much. So I always say, you are what you consume, right? You are that. And so, you know, it's your civil right. It's your civil duty. It's your civil responsibility. And it's outlined in the Declaration of Independence. And then it's also outlined in it when it becomes abrupt, right? When it becomes all these things destructive of these, it has a formula in the Declaration. And Abraham Lincoln, again, said the Declaration is way more important than the Constitution. The Constitution is written to keep Congress in check. The Declaration is our basic formula. It's the, like I told people, the military, we were established first in this nation. Military came first, military law. Well, if we got to go back to military law, the military law is the last line of defense before we go to a war. So when you back it out, when you go Constitution, Declaration, military law, military, what came before that? Revolutionary War. So that shows you when you go read and study what most certainly has been invoked. We are most certain it's 100%. We have been in a military government. Martial law. President don't have to tell you that we're in martial law, especially depending on what kind of threats there are. He does not have to tell you that. That is also written in our law. All right. But when you see how close we were to that brink right there, then you'll see where you failed in your duties and your responsibilities. And then you should feel guilty from the right manner, meaning that I'm not kicking you while you're down. I'm trying to say, you're on the ground already. I'm trying to help you up. All right. Because I'm your last line of defense. We are your last line of defense. You already on the ground and you didn't know it. You think you've been doing good, but you haven't, right? And so it's like, hey, own it. And I like to use military stories every now and then, but you know, everybody has a butt chewing in the Army or the military, period. Everybody. It could just happen at any time, right? You can get your ass chewed out for anything. And then 5 minutes later, you know, it's just it's a norm. It's part of it, right? And you don't sit there, you don't stew all day long on that. Because I've told people one day in the military, especially the Army and the Marine Corps, but one day in the military is like a month or two in civilian, depending on what you're doing. You don't have time to sulk and get mad and all these other things, because right when you get your ass chewed, we got chewed one day. It's so funny. We got chewed one day by a first sergeant and then turned around. And he was cocky in a good way, but confident, whatever you want to call it. But he marched us in ahead of another unit to let us eat first, because we were more of an operator than they were. and their tops didn't like it. He went and tattled. Next thing you know, the doggone sergeant major storming in the building. And he gets right in front of our tops. And I mean, it sounded like Morse code. He was cussing so much. I don't even know a constructive sentence he put together. All you could hear was beep, 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 beep. It's like, who the beep. I mean, it was, and he was standing there, first sergeant, right? Tops, standing there, parade rest, you know, I'd say parade rest. It may have been the colonel, but I can't remember. It was someone else. It was either colonel or sergeant major. He annihilated him. And he had to turn in front of all the chow hall. His face had a little, you know, the little rose red when people blush. Ain't nothing else you can do, because he couldn't leave the building. He still had all of us, his soldiers. So, you know, and no one, because we couldn't say anything to him anyway. We couldn't be like, because he'd have spoke to, you know, being humiliated like that, he'd have really taken it out on us if anybody would have cracked or, got out of military bearing. But it taught us that, you know what, if he gets his ass chewed out, it's going to happen to everybody, anybody. And you learn to take that as construction, not oh, you did something wrong and you're forever a piece of trash, right? If everybody would take the construct what we call constructive criticism, construction's root word is to build something. It's like it's a building, right? Is that the process always? Is that always the kind of result that you won't know? But it happens, right? And if people will learn that, to quit getting offended over everything, quit taking things so serious, right? And just roll with it. The more they told us in the military not to make a homophobic joke or a racist joke or any kind of joke, the more we did it, because every one of us were from a different race. Every one of us liked different kinds of people. So they weren't telling us anything we didn't already know, right? So no one got mad, and the more you did it, the more it was such stress-free, because it's like, man, thank goodness, and everybody loved it, and if people would get that mentality again, just people straight up, first, you're civil. Let's forget about your civil rights and duties for a moment. Just quit being so tense. Quit being uptight. Quit trying to just want to fight something. Or people, why are people wanting to just fight all the time? Like I laid in bed this morning and I was like, I got up at 5. I watched the blood moon eclipse, right? I did that. I went back to sleep. I woke up at like 9 and I'm like, I was sitting there like, I was like, I'm only 43 years old and I feel like I'm 83. And I'm like sitting there thinking, could I still go on the road and do all the things I used to do and want to, I loved it. I just lived for the road and the highway. And I'm like, I was sitting there thinking, but I was applying it, meaning like the energy. Why do people want to fight all the time? I don't even have the energy to hardly roll over, right, and go get a cup of coffee, right? And if people would apply that kind of humor, going like, why are people so mad? Why do people just want to fight? Why do you just want to get in the comment box and, oh, you're a this and you're a that, and you're an idiot and this and that and this, when they don't even have anything constructive? Occasionally, yeah, you'll see me on social media. I'll be calling liberals. I'll say, they're dumber than a unicycle with an emergency brake, or, they're dumber than a Sea-Doo with a tire rod, But other than that, do I really think that people are dumb? I don't want them to be, but they display it, but I don't want them to be. And at the end of the day, if they come to the table, I don't care how far off they are, to the left, to the whatever they are, I can meet them at the table. I'm saying, like, what's our commonality? What's our common goal here? I don't go home with you. I don't pay your bills. I don't like the things you like. You watch this show, that show. I don't care, right? Well, what's our commonality? What brings us on a federal level commonly? What brings us on the state level commonly if I live in your state? What does that? At the end of the day, if there's nothing else that ties us together, then there's no reason to be arguing and fighting. Like our founders said, our founders specifically said that, hey, there's 2 things you don't want to fight over with friends and family: religion and politics, right? So where do we get our commonality? And so if people learn first your attitude, get your attitude correct, flip your attitude, flip your script around. Right? The insanity quote. Quit saying the same things that make you negative, angry, bitter, all these things. I'm not a preacher, didn't come here to preach, but the Bible does say that salt water and fresh water can't flow from the same spring. And it also says that God is not the author of confusion. It's not. So if anything's making you confused, mad, negative, bitter, angry, stressful, it's not of God. But then you could say, well, how is President Trump of God? Well, allow me to show you. I can show you that through laws and orders if you'll read, study, comprehend. But that requires initiative, effort. You got to be studious, and you can't give up. When you feel like you're tired and you're struggling, that's perfect. Struggle don't mean you're failing. Struggle means you can elevate from there. When you feel like you're struggling, put it down. That's all right. Take a break. Come back at it. Don't get mad at it, because it's still there. The laws and orders are still there. No matter how many people call me crazy, an idiot, this is hogwash, BS. No, the more they've done it, the more they try to, hate me and all. The laws and orders are still there. They didn't go away. The more they're there. So if you really want to know, then that you got to have the attitude, and then you got to have your formula. The formula is our foundation. Everything President Trump and the military is doing reflects that foundation. learn that foundation. Go back to studying and reading the founders' philosophies and our founding documents. And I know I'm obviously advertising here, but I mean, this book that I put together, I took all the founding documents and put it in one location. There's no other book like it, but all the founders' philosophies, ideologies, and even if it presses you, like Thomas Paine, I've heard people, oh, he was an atheist. Big deal. Read his writings. He was for our nation being a deist based on a deity, even though he was considered an atheist. Like, go read his writings. Forget about what he is and what he was. And just, if you have a foundation, it won't shake you anyway. So read our founders, our philosophies, and you'll see how they wrote what they wrote, why they wrote what they wrote. It's not just knowing the foundation. It's knowing what they were appreciative of and what they set up. And then fast forward to today. But once you see all that, you'll be able to see what President Trump is doing. It's to the T. I mean, it can't get any more to the T than what it is. And especially militarily, it cannot get any more crystal clear to the T, the dotted I's and the crossed T's of the standard, premier standard of what our founders set up. And the only way to know that is you got to know those things first, and then the laws and the orders of this. And those are still going to be your civil rights and your civil duties and your civil responsibilities, right? Because there's certain laws that's never going away. Because they're staple, they're good, they're staple. Even if they've been abused, the law itself could still be a good law. It was the abuse of what was going on back here. All right. And so it's just a combination of a few things that people could do just to, reset here, and then reset here. And then when you reset these two things, then this is going to automatically reset.
That's really it. When you look, hate to use that old line, but facts being what they are, it's one thing for people to think you're stupid. It's another thing for you to prove it to them, and we have too many people on a daily basis who do that. But in the meantime, I want to be very respectful of your time. We're already way past what it was supposed to be for you, but it's always fantastic conversation. Always a fantastic conversation. And I hope people learn something from this. And mostly what I hope they learned is to take that responsibility, to take care of your duties, to do the things that we have to do. We're only getting one shot at this, folks. Again, one shot, because after this, the plan is blown. Ain't never going to happen again. So we've got to get into a position whereby we are in the position and ready to take control of our country. And then we can have everything that's been, quote unquote, promised to us for the Great Awakening. So Derek, again, I thank you. Always a fantastic conversation. Yeah. Of course, I also have to thank Claudia, Kat, Carrie, and Doug, because without them, we'd be two guys sitting here having a conversation and nobody listening. So always the best in the business. They are the greatest. And again, thank you. I also, as I've been ending every show, and I'd love for you to hang around, Derek, because I don't know, I don't think that you've heard this yet, but I've been closing every show with Who Saves the Children. And I've picked these four organizations. I don't like to use the word charities anymore because it's got a bad connotation, but these four organizations, because they do nothing but help the children. And if you're interested in the song, if you want to get a copy of the song, none of it goes to me. I'm not even playing middleman here. You make a donation to any one of these four organizations, email me and tell me that you did so, and I will send you a link. Have your own personal copy of the song. It's digital, so I can't sign it, so sorry about that. But every penny of it goes to help the children. And if you could do Rumble Rants, or you can run to Starbucks, or go to any of the meet and greets, you can afford $5 to help the kids, because that's what it's all about. President told us that. That's really what it's all about. And it's our duty as Americans, it's our duty as human beings to help the children. So again, thank you, Derek. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great, great week. And we'll see you again next week for another Respect. Good night, everybody.
Children are the center of our world, and we do our best to show them that we care. But evil is lurking everywhere to steal their youth, kill their soul, show them things that they should never know. We live in the craziest of times and never know what's in another's mind. We keep them safe, protect from bad, but they just choose to make them sad and keep their evil rituals alive. Who saves the children? We do, we do. Who keeps them safe and warm and so secure? We do, we do. Who saves the children? We do, we do. And we'll fight to death to keep it safe for you. We'll fight for what's right with all of our might, and we won't leave one single child behind. They've been here since the dawn of time, and their actions take a twisted mind. But we won't stand no more. We'll track them down for sure and make sure that they are gone forevermore. Why can't you see the crimes committed on our kids by the powers that be? How long do we wait? How many must die? How many loving parents need to cry? Who saves the children?